Job interviews can be a lot of fun, especially if you're not the one looking for that job. There are several stories of legendary interview questions and incidents. You've probably heard how Microsoft used to ask candidates, how would you move Mount Fuji? And while there perhaps is no right answer, it was a question designed to reveal how a person's thinking process really was. And then you've probably heard that funny story about IKEA, where the panel asked the candidate to please take a seat. And all the candidate can see, though, are some pieces of wood and some screws and nuts. Clearly, at IKEA, you've got to learn to assemble that chair yourself. There's one such story about an interview question, and that's really the one I want to talk about today, because I think it's got a powerful lesson for all of us. Hello and welcome to another edition of Chai with Pai, our weekly series of videos where I try and share simple stories and lessons to help each of us become just a bit better. Thomas Alva Edison, that famous scientist and the great inventor, was known to be very particular about the kind of people who'd work with him. He wanted to be sure that his colleagues, his associates, were all people who had a mind of their own, who were willing to challenge the status quo, who wouldn't be easily swayed by other people's opinions, who would believe in their ability to perhaps change the world. And because Edison was so particular about the kind of people who would work with him, his interview process was pretty stringent too. So he'd spend a lot of time asking all the questions, spend time with the candidate in the lab, and after a few meetings, if Edison felt this person would fit the bill, he would take the candidate out for a meal. And once at the restaurant, Edison would then sit down with the candidate and order some food, usually a soup for both of them. And as soon as the soup arrived, Edison would take a spoonful and announce, the soup needs more salt, and pour some salt onto his soup. And then Edison would watch what the candidate would do. If the candidate believed the great Edison and said, the salt is low, and if he went on to add some salt into his soup, that would be a fail. He would be looking for a candidate who, even having heard that the soup needed more salt, would actually take a spoonful himself or herself and then decide whether the soup needed more salt or not. Interesting story. And I think it's a story that can teach all of us an important lesson for our lives. We all tend to make the mistake of believing what somebody else might say. We don't always challenge what might seem like a voice of authority. We take it for granted. Now, it can happen that sometimes people might say something because it's their truth, it's their version of the fact, and it may not necessarily be your truth or the version you'd want to go with. Sometimes people can give you a view which might be relevant for them, but may not be relevant for you. And very often it happens to us that we are told that, here's a line of education that you must pursue because it's really the best thing there is, but it may not be right for you. Or you're told about a job that you should be looking for, and that job may not be right for you. So it's a good idea for you to become the kind of person who doesn't just believe what somebody else says, but tries to verify the fact for themselves, who tries to check whether what's being said is as true for them as it might be for someone else. So whether it comes to a Twitter version of what's happening to government policy, or if it comes to saying, what should you be doing with your life and your career? Good idea to be the kind of person Edison would have hired. Someone who is verifying facts, someone who's thinking for himself or for herself, someone who's not just blindly believing what other people might say. So next time someone tells you that the soup needs more salt, don't be in a rush to reach for the shaker and put some salt into that soup. Take a sip and figure for yourself if you need more salt or not. That's all in this week's edition of Chai with Pi. Do remember to share this video if you like it, and of course, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. Until next week, enjoy your soup and of course, enjoy your chai.